Story ideas can come from anywhere. And a lot of times there's formulas and genres and things that you can recreate with new characters, new settings, and the stories work. But just about anywhere you look, you can develop a story and put it into a story format. The big question that you ask with stories is what if? So, what if, as in Apollo 13, the astronauts are on a failed mission, and how do we resolve that to get the astronauts home safely? And that was based on a true story. Um, what if toys could come alive? That's a Toy Story. So there's a lot of what ifs that you can put in front of yourself and then answer them and develop your stories from that. But if you are stuck, so if you're working for a company or even on your own, you're trying to move forward with a story and you have writer's block, there's a few techniques you can use to build your stories. So a mind map. A mind map is basically a drawing of images. And images, words and images are synonymous, and you can build a story based on images. So to create a mind map, you start with a word and you do free association around that word, and you draw lines connecting the thoughts, and ideas will begin to build as the words are connected. So let's start with the word, how about a kite? So the things that come to mind when I think of a kite are wind, flying, tail. So the tail gets caught in the wind. String. Like a bird. Um, what happens when you fly a kite? Beach. So you're on a beach. Sometimes running, you run with a kite. Birds have feathers, so let's go down another path. And tails. So they're like a kite, colorful. So right now I can think, they're, birds and kites are similar in a lot of ways. So what if we made a story about a bird and a kite? So a bird sees a kite flying and thinks it's showing off its colorful tail. It also has a colorful tail, so it wants to have a competition. So wins everything except the last thing. And the bird thinks it's dead, so the bird wins everything. Kite, it falls to its own death. It falls to the ground. The bird looks sad because he didn't want that to happen. And then a big wind gush. And the kite wins. So we have our protagonist, we have our antagonist, we have our conflict. That's a competition between a bird and a kite. We have our bad guys move in, point of no return, where the kite, it looks like the kite is dead. And then we have our plot twist at the end where the wind comes in and brings the kite back to life. And then the kite is excited and he wins. So it's a fun, this would probably be a good animation idea. It lends itself to that. But all comes from the words and the pictures. So that's a mind map. So tell me a story about a guy who is a process of free association. And this works well when you have a group of people and you can go from one person to the next and the thoughts are just building on the previous thought of another person. The objective is to have this character be someone you can identify with, someone you can learn from, someone you have a compelling reason to follow, you believe they deserve to win, and the stakes are primal and they ring true for you. It's something that that you are familiar with as a human being. So, tell me a story about a guy who... Well, how can we start this? So, tell me a story about a guy who has bad breath and that makes him shy. So we'll make him a kid. So it's a kid who has bad breath and makes him extremely shy. He hides at home and he builds rockets. And one day, one of the rockets shoots into the air and it lands in the backyard of the most popular girl at school. So one day... So she brings it back to him. And he discovers that she also has bad breath. So he builds a rocket, and the two escape out of the town. So this is kind of a silly story. It's not extremely dramatic. It's more social. It's kind of like an after school special, but it has a character protagonist with a problem, and that problem unfolds, and then there's a resolution. So tell me a story about a guy who, and if you go from person to person to person, they add one more thing to the story plot, you can end up with a very interesting and fun story. So that's the second technique that you can use. Another technique you can use is what's called the story spine. So this is a classic story structure, and you just kind of fill in this rhythmic pattern here. So once upon a time, let's say a flower fairy has wings and flies around, dropping flowers on everybody. And every day she collects flowers from the forest. Until one day all the flowers are dead. And because of that, people didn't get their flowers. And they were angry. They became angry. And because of that, she had to run away, or because of that, her life was in danger. Flew away. Until finally, a swarm of bees came and gave her their flowers. And ever since that day, the flower fairy had a bee escort when she delivered flowers. And the moral of the story is help can come from anywhere. So again, this is kind of like an idea for an animation. It has characters in it that are not human, so they could be exaggerated, and it follows the rhythm of a classic story structure. Once upon a time, Flower Fairy had wings, and she flies around dropping flowers on everybody. And every day she collects flowers from the forest until one day all the flowers are dead. And because of that, people didn't get their flowers. And because of that, they became unhappy and angry. And because of that, her life was in danger, so she flew away. until finally a swarm of bees found her and gave her their stash of flowers. And ever since that day, the flower fairy had a bee escort when she delivered her flowers. So it's kind of cute, but that's the story spine, and you can put this into many modern day classic films and animations. Another method of coming up with stories is using log lines. So a log line is just a 1 or 2 sentence description of a film that is designed to show the elements that comprise the interesting essence of the movie. The title usually has a twist, a double entendre, and adjectives describe the hero, the conflict, and the antagonist. So examples of some good log lines for The Godfather. The aging patriarch of an organized crime dynasty transfers control of his clandestine empire to his reluctant son. So the adjectives are aging and organized and clandestine. So these are describing the features of this conflict. Star Wars, Luke Skywalker, a spirited farm boy. There's the adjective that describes him. Joins rebel forces to save Princess Leia from the evil Darth Vader and the galaxy from the Empire's planet-destroying Death Star. This is based on Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, and it's described with new characters. So all of the Star Wars films come from the Joseph Campbell process of describing the hero of 1,000 faces. Rear Window, a classic Alfred Hitchcock film. A wheelchair-bound photographer spies on his neighbors from his apartment window and becomes convinced one of them has committed a murder. Let's see, Groundhog Day. A weatherman finds himself inexplicably living the same day over and over again. We could add some adjectives in there, so it could be an arrogant weatherman finds himself inexplicably living the same boring day over and over again, or some other thing. So the weatherman has personality to him. Terminator, a seemingly indestructible android. So there's your adjective, seemingly indestructible, is sent from 2029 to 1984 to assassinate a waitress whose unborn son will lead humanity in a war against the machines, while a soldier from that war is sent to protect her at all costs. So those are log lines, and you know which films they are without me telling you the film because of the 1 or 2 sentence description, and those descriptions are so solid that they describe the whole plot in a very quick elevator pitch kind of line. So that's another technique that you can use for stories. And there's many other ways that you can find story information. So you can keep a dream journal and write your dreams down as soon as you wake up. There's a lot of imagery that will come from your subconscious mind, and some really interesting things can come of that. The Terminator image of the Terminator walking out of the fire, James Cameron has said on camera that was a dream that he had, and he sketched that out, and that became the story of the Terminator. So dream journals can be fun. Exaggerate a contemporary issue and create a lesson for the struggle. So there are many issues that you look around, and you can put fantasy characters into real life situations. That's where the Titanic film came from with Rose and Jack. They weren't real characters, but they were based on a real event. You can eavesdrop on a conversation and create the before and after scenario. So this is always fun if you're in a restaurant and you sit next to someone and listen to what they're saying and watch their behavior. You can learn a lot from how they use their body language and their facial expressions. If you're an animator, that's great reference and resource material. You can invent history for someone with whom you have lost touch. So there are lots of different ways you can generate stories and story ideas, and the world is open. The world is filled with stories. Just look around.